I took my daughter to the hospital for her next chemo session, but the doctor stopped us and said, "Your child never had cancer." I glanced over at my daughter, who was clearly weak, bald, and thin after months of treatment, and told the new oncologist she had to be wrong. She turned her computer screen toward me. No tumors. No cancer cells. Nothing. Not in today's scans, nor in any test from the past 6 months. I felt the floor drop out from under me. That's impossible, I thought. Look at her, she's dying. The doctor frowned at the files. Your original physician is on leave, and these records are incomplete. But there's never been a single cancer marker. What medications is she taking? My daughter spoke up softly. Just vitamins. The doctor shook her head. Vitamins wouldn't cause this. Bring me everything she consumes, food, drinks, supplements, everything. I'm running full toxicology panels. She scribbled her number on a slip of paper. Call me the second anything seems off. I left the hospital shaking, staring at my little girl. If she didn't have cancer, then why was she dying? That night, I tore apart our medicine cabinet and brought everything to the doctor in 2 grocery bags. The tests showed nothing unusual in the bottles themselves. But my daughter's blood work revealed mysterious toxin levels that shouldn't be there. So, I started bringing in samples of our meals. I was desperate. While waiting for more results, I scrolled through my wife's social media page, filled with heartfelt videos about our daughter's journey to recovery. I'd always been grateful for the support she gathered, especially the fundraising page that helped us through the months. But as I read the comments, something strange caught my eye. One man, named Dale, kept posting on every single update, "Don't donate. This is a scam. Don't trust her." I was furious. What kind of sick person would say that on a child's cancer page? I clicked his profile and messaged him, "Why are you doing this? Why are you leaving comments like that on my wife and daughter's page?" He replied almost instantly, "Your wife? Meet me tomorrow at the McDonald's with the playground. Don't tell her." The next day, I went alone. Dale was sitting in the corner, staring out the window, eyes hollow. "Your daughter doesn't have cancer, does she?" he asked before I could even sit down. "How did you know?" "Because my son, Tommy, never had it either." He showed me a photo, him, his little boy, and my wife, smiling together in a hospital room. "After Tommy died, I couldn't function," he said, voice trembling. But something felt wrong about how fast it all happened. I paid for private toxicology tests, used hair from his brush, baby teeth he'd lost during treatment. His hands shook. He was poisoned. And I found out too late. Before I could speak, my phone rang. It was the doctor. I put it on speaker. "Sir, the toxicology results came back. Your daughter has methate and arsenic in her system. She's being systematically poisoned. We found traces in the cereal you brought. Please bring her back immediately for treatment." When the call ended, Dale slammed his fist on the table. I knew it. I've been trying to warn people, but everyone thinks I'm just a grieving father who lost his mind. She's a nurse, worked in pediatric oncology for 5 years. She knows exactly how to mimic cancer symptoms with the right doses. He leaned forward. "You have to catch her in the act. Set up cameras, record everything. Without proof, she'll get away with it again, just like she did with Tommy." That night, I hid a camera in the kitchen, streaming to my phone. The next morning, I pretended to leave for work, but parked down the street instead. On the feed, I watched my wife pour cereal into our daughter's favorite bowl, then reach into the back of the cabinet. She pulled out a prescription bottle hidden inside a sugar box. Carefully, she crushed 2 white pills and sprinkled them over the cereal, mixing it with milk. "Breakfast is ready, sweetheart," she called out in her sing-song voice. I ran back to the house and burst through the door just as my daughter lifted the first spoonful. I knocked the bowl from her hands. Ceramic shattered across the floor. My wife froze. In that moment, she realized I knew. Then the kitchen door slammed open. Dale stood there, pointing a gun at her. "Hello, Susan," Dale said. Her eyes widened. "Dale? How did you find me?" "I've been waiting a long time for this," he replied, voice low and shaking. I stepped forward. "Dale, we have the video now. Let the police handle it." He shook his head. "They didn't believe me when Tommy died. They won't believe you either." She's too smart. My wife pulled our daughter in front of her like a shield. You won't shoot me in front of a child. Watch me, Dale said, flicking the safety off the gun. I lunged from the side just as his finger tightened on the trigger. The gun went off with a deafening crack, heat brushing past my face. Susan screamed, dragging our daughter behind the kitchen island as Dale and I slammed to the floor. We rolled across shards of the shattered cereal bowl. I grabbed for his wrist, fighting to keep the gun aimed away. He was stronger than he looked. We grunted and shoved, knocking a chair into the counter. Behind the island, my daughter was sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. I pinned Dale's gun hand to the floor, but he slammed his other arm into my face. The weapon was still in his grip. If he aimed again, someone would die. Run. I yelled. Go to the neighbor's house, now. She peeked out from behind the island, eyes wide, face streaked with tears. For a terrifying moment, she just stared at us. Then she bolted for the back door, her sneakers slapping against the tile. The door banged open, and I heard her footsteps pounding across the deck and into the yard. Dale twisted under me, trying to see where she went. I slammed his hand down again, and the gun skittered across the floor, stopping near the refrigerator. We both dove for it, then I heard sirens. Faint at first, but rising fast, that wailing sound cutting through the chaos. Dale froze, eyes wide. That's when I realized my phone was still connected to 911. They'd heard everything, the gunshot, the screaming, all of it. He stopped struggling, breathing hard, staring at the ceiling where a bullet hole smoked in the drywall. I crawled to the gun, picking it up carefully by the grip even though my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold on. Behind the island, Susan was crying too, sharp, broken sounds like a trapped animal. The sirens cut off. Car doors slammed. Then the front door burst open and officers flooded the house, weapons raised, shouting commands I could barely understand. I dropped the gun immediately, hands in the air. It's not mine. I live here. Dale was already kneeling, his hands up, head bowed. The officers shouted for both of us to get down. I lay face first on the cold tile, milk and cereal still sticking to it, my heart hammering so hard I thought I'd black out. I kept shouting about my daughter, that she'd run next door, that someone needed to check on her. An officer grabbed my arms and cuffed me, but he wasn't rough. He helped me to my knees while others moved in on Dale. Another officer rounded the island, guns still trained on Susan. I was shaking so hard I could barely stay upright. Please, I kept saying, check on my daughter. The officer holding me spoke into his radio, then said quietly, she's okay. A female officer came through the back door a minute later. Your daughter's safe, she said. Neighbors have her. Paramedics are with her now. My knees nearly gave out with relief, and the officer had to steady me. Susan was in handcuffs, crying and rambling, saying Dale had broken in, that he was crazy, that she didn't do anything wrong. Her voice was soft and syrupy, the same tone she used when talking to our daughter. And hearing it made my stomach turn. The officers ignored Susan's protests as they led her toward the front door. More police arrived until the house was filled with uniforms, some photographing the bullet hole, others bagging evidence. Within 15 minutes, a detective showed up. He introduced himself as Detective Dexter Townsend, calm, deliberate, the kind of man who didn't rush even in chaos. He asked to see the video on my phone. My hands were still shaking so badly I nearly dropped it twice before unlocking it. Dexter watched silently as Susan poured the cereal, pulled out the hidden bottle, crushed the pills, and mixed them in. His jaw tightened. When it ended, he asked to see it again. Then he called a tech over to download the file and bagged my phone as evidence. He led me to the living room while officers escorted Susan outside. Through the window, I saw her still crying and pleading, the officers unmoved. Dexter sat across from me, recorder on the table, and told me to start from the beginning. I explained everything, the doctor's discovery, Dale's comments online, our meeting, Tommy's story, the toxicology results, the hidden camera. I stumbled through the details, but Dexter guided me with questions. When I got to the part where I stopped my daughter from eating the cereal, he just nodded slowly, his pen still. Through the window, I saw Dale being led to another car, head bowed. Dexter said he was being held in protective custody. He'd face charges for the gun, but they understood why he did it. An officer told me I could go to my daughter. I ran across the lawn to Mrs. Akant's house. Before I could knock, the door opened and my daughter threw herself into my arms, sobbing. I dropped to my knees and held her tight. Mrs. Akant, trembling, asked if we were all right. I told her yes and thanked her. My daughter clung to me, asking where Mommy went. I told her everything was going to be okay. The paramedic checked her again, pulse steady, breathing normal, but said she should still go to the hospital for observation. I agreed instantly and lifted her into my arms. She buried her face in my neck, her tears soaking through my shirt. Mrs. Akant walked us to my car, helped buckle my daughter in, and told me to call if we needed anything. On the drive to the hospital, my daughter kept asking questions, why we had to go back, if she'd get more shots. I told her the doctors just wanted to make sure she felt better. At the ER, Dr. Sanford was already waiting, as if he'd known we were coming. He led us straight to a private room and began setting up in 4 while a nurse brought in fluids. We need to flush the toxins and start medication right away, he explained. My daughter cried when she saw the needles, hiding behind me. After months of thinking she had cancer, every monitor and tube terrified her. She kept asking where Mommy was. I couldn't tell her the truth, not yet. So, I just held her hand and promised she'd be okay. Dr. Sanford was patient and gentle. My daughter squeezed my hand so tightly it hurt, but I didn't let go. A woman in professional clothes entered and introduced herself as Catherine Bishop from social work. She asked to speak privately, so I stepped into the hallway where I could still see my daughter through the glass. Catherine explained that CPS had been notified. It was standard when a child was harmed by a parent. My stomach dropped, but she reassured me it was to keep my daughter safe. A caseworker would visit tomorrow. Back in the room, a nurse handed me consent forms. My hands shook so much my signature came out crooked. Catherine quietly helped me study the papers and said she'd check in often. My daughter lay small and pale in the hospital bed for running. I pulled up a chair beside her and promised I wasn't leaving. That evening, Detective Dexter returned. He carried clear evidence bags, the cereal box, and the hidden prescription bottle inside. He set a recorder on the table and asked me to start from the beginning. I told him everything about the new doctor, Dale's messages, Tommy, the toxicology call, and the hidden camera. I stumbled over parts, but Dexter listened patiently, taking careful notes as I spoke. I tell Dexter that Susan worked in pediatric oncology for 5 years before we met and knew exactly which drugs could mimic cancer symptoms. He notes it down and asks about the timeline and doctors we'd seen. When I finish, he tells me Susan is being held without bail on attempted murder charges. The words hit hard, even though I'd expected them. Dale's also in custody on weapons charges, but is cooperating. The DA will meet me tomorrow. They have solid evidence. The video, the pills, and Dale's statement about Tommy. I ask what happens next. Dexter tells me to focus on my daughter's recovery and call him if I remember anything. That night, I try to sleep in the chair beside her hospital bed, but keep waking to the sound of monitors. She's restless, feverish, twisting under the blankets. I check her breathing every few minutes. Around 3 a.m., she finally drifts into deep sleep. Watching her chest rise and fall, I can't stop thinking how close I came to losing her and how blind I was to Susan's cruelty. Morning light filters through the blinds. I've barely slept when a woman in a gray suit appears, Priscilla Robertson from Child Protective Services. She sits beside me, folder in hand, and explains she needs to make sure my daughter will be safe. I answer every question and show her the video of Susan mixing pills into the cereal. She watches it twice, taking notes, and says she'll return tomorrow and interview my daughter gently with a psychologist present. Around noon, I meet Assistant District Attorney Celia Kararma in a small conference room. She lays out the evidence, Susan's medical background, the poison, the footage, Dale's testimony. It all paints a clear picture of intent. The trial is months away, but Susan will stay locked up. Celia says Dale's case with Tommy strengthens the pattern. Back in my daughter's room, Dr. Sanford says the treatment is working. Her toxin levels are dropping, but she'll need at least a week of close monitoring. Her organs took serious damage. I thank him and step into the hall to call my boss. He's kind, tells me to take time off, but I can hear the worry in his voice. Bills are already stacking up. When I return, my daughter is waking. She blinks at me and asks softly, "Where's Mommy?" My throat tightens. I sit on the edge of her bed, wondering how to tell her the truth, that the person she trusted most was the one who hurt her. I tell my daughter as gently as I can that Mommy was making her sick, and that's why she needs to stay in the hospital to get better. She looks at me with wide, confused eyes, hurt and disbelief mixing together. "Mommy loves me. She'd never hurt me," she whispers, shaking her head. I don't argue. I just hold her as she cries, asking for her mother again and again, until she finally falls asleep, tears still on her cheeks. Later that afternoon, Detective Dexter calls with an update. They searched our house and found more evidence. Susan's hidden journal where she tracked every symptom and adjusted doses like an experiment. He sounds disgusted describing it. They also found another stash of medication hidden in a tampon box. Everything's been sent for analysis. I hang up feeling sick. The next day, Dexter calls again. The toxicologist, Dr. Lucius Pendleton, confirmed it's a clear case of Munchausen by proxy. Susan used her medical knowledge to keep our daughter sick without killing her, just enough to draw sympathy. Combined with the video and Dale's testimony, the case against her is airtight. I sit by my daughter's bed watching her sleep peacefully for the first time in months, realizing how close we came to losing her. 2 days later, Dexter calls again. Dale wants to apologize for bringing the gun and putting my daughter in danger. I tell Dexter I'm not ready to talk to him. I'm still angry, still thinking about what could have gone wrong. He understands. After we hang up, I watch my daughter eating her lunch and remind myself to focus on her healing instead of my anger. The next afternoon, Priscilla returns with a child psychologist named Autumn Townsend. She explains that she needs to interview my daughter privately to understand how she's coping. I hate leaving her alone, but Priscilla assures me it's necessary. I wait in the hall, pacing, checking the clock every few minutes. Over an hour later, Autumn comes out looking tired and serious. She leads me into a quiet room and says softly, "Your daughter is showing signs of trauma bonding with Susan." Autumn explains that children abused by a parent often struggle to accept that the person who hurt them is also the one they love. My daughter will need long-term therapy to rebuild her sense of safety. She recommends weekly sessions for at least 6 months, maybe longer. When I ask if my daughter will be okay, Autumn says recovery is possible, but it will take time and patience. Later that week, Catherine finds me in the hospital cafeteria, sitting over a cold cup of coffee. She brings a folder of paperwork and helps me apply for emergency financial aid and crime victim compensation. The bills are already piling up, and I have no idea how to manage. Catherine patiently walks me through the forms, explaining every step. She promises the hospital's assistance program and the victim fund will help cover costs once the case moves forward. That evening, I get a call from an out-of-state number, Susan's mother. Her voice shakes as she insists there must be a mistake, that Susan would never hurt anyone. I tell her about the video, the toxicology reports, everything. She starts making excuses, saying maybe Susan was confused, maybe it was an accident. I can't listen anymore. I hang up, hands trembling with anger. 3 weeks later, Celia calls with news from the grand jury. Susan has been indicted on multiple charges, including attempted murder, child abuse, and fraud. The trial is set for 4 months from now. Celia says this gives us time to prepare and lets my daughter heal before testifying. I want it over, but I know we need to be ready. Meanwhile, my daughter improves day by day. Her color returns, her appetite grows, and she even smiles again. Dr. Sanford says he's hopeful but warns we'll need to monitor her liver and kidneys long-term. For the first time in months, I feel real hope watching her color and laugh. A few days later, Dexter visits with an envelope from Dale. I wait until he leaves before opening it. Inside is a handwritten letter, an apology for everything, for the gun, for the danger, and for the grief that led him there. In his letter, Dale admits he should have gone to the police years ago instead of posting warnings no one believed. He writes about his grief over Tommy and how desperation drove him to stop Susan before she hurt anyone else. His words are raw and full of pain. He acknowledges bringing the gun was wrong and says he's thankful no one was hurt. He hopes my daughter recovers fully and that one day I can forgive him. I sit with the letter for 2 days before writing back. I tell him I'm not ready to forgive him for bringing the gun into my home, but I appreciate that he tried to warn people when no one else would listen. His actions, however reckless, helped me uncover the truth in time. I update him on my daughter's progress and thank him for his part in saving her life. I give the letter to Dexter to deliver, hoping it brings Dale a little peace. The following week, Priscilla meets with me to discuss her final report. She recommends I retain full custody, with supervised visitation only if Susan is ever released. She says I've proven I can protect and care for my daughter, but suggests regular check-ins for the next year. Relief floods through me. Losing custody would have broken what's left of our family. 3 days later, the hospital begins discharge planning. Catherine meets me with a stack of paperwork and explains that my daughter will need home health visits twice a week for a month, plus follow-ups with kidney, liver, and nutrition specialists. She organizes everything into a color-coded calendar and gives me emergency contacts in case anything changes. Before we leave, Autumn stops by with a folder of therapy resources. She explains my daughter will need ongoing counseling for trauma and gives me a list of warning signs, nightmares, eating changes, fear of certain places, or acting younger than her age. She also recommends I get counseling, reminding me that parents carry scars too. I promise I will, though all I can think about is getting my daughter home safe.